And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta Independence, broadcasting live 6 days a week. That's Monday through Saturday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Let's get it going. I'm going to have to check the sound because something strange was happening.
Yes, please let us know if the sound is working because something weird happened. But first of all, thank you so much for being here. Please do subscribe. It's what helps us out the most. And thank you so much for all your support up to now as well. If you don't know, we read all the comments, no matter what you send almost, but we do read them at the end of each segment. We have segments that we go through throughout the whole show. We're checking the sound.
Yeah, it seems to be working, so
and
perfect.
Also, we do prioritize super chats, but anyways, we read them all.
Well, we're going to try to read them all because yesterday we had a lot of comments. We got through most of them, but if you do want your chat read, super chat, and we stop the show and read it right away.
Yes.
Okay, let's get in.
And we do have a hard out at 7 today because we have to film an interview afterwards. I'll start saying hi to everybody. Glenn Gunn says, good evening, Nat and Guy. Watched Marty's daytime show on Western Standard. Some good questions from all. Yeah,
I was watching a little bit of that today as well. I caught about 15 minutes and then something came up, so I wasn't able to continue.
Val Norman says, going to the Consort Gun Show on the April 26th weekend to collect signatures, and we will be giving our badges back to our regional leaders.
Oh, wow.
And Glenn Gunn says, I bet that will be a great and sad day.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody that has helped this far to get the petition and the signatures signed. Yes. I also watched Marty last night on Clyde Do Something. Absolutely fantastic. They went through a wide range of issues, and Alberta independence being a large framework of a lot of that. So it's good to see a national show that gets out to national conservatives talking about Alberta independence, because I think Clyde's the only show outside of Alberta really talking about it on a regular basis.
Yes. And Edward says, hola. Glenn Gunn says, I met a few canvassers over the months. Happy, good people. And yes, we are very thankful. We always try to say it and highlight it, and did a stream to say thank you to all the canvassers as well. But it is what has kept this whole thing actually alive and moving forward, and the referendum, the signatures needed for the referendum as well.
And it's been a strong showing because we do have a lot of signatures at this point. So
yes, and especially during the winter months, the freezing temperatures, and still being out there waving flags and with good positive attitudes, which has been great to see as well. Every time we see a video of canvassers, or you let us know if you're a canvasser. Lyle Norman says, yeah, I like running into people that think alike. There's so many great people in Alberta, and I concur.
Absolutely. And the sentiment on the other side, the nationalist side, we're going to get into that a little bit today because they're trying to mount an opposition, but they just have a lot of negative vibes. They're trying to lean on history. History's gone from their side. They've been trying to erase it for well over a decade now.
It's toxic, essentially. But let's get into is it breaking news that you had?
Oh, yeah. I put this as breaking news. It's not so much breaking, but I missed talking about it last night, and it's probably the most important news for Alberta independence in a while.
Should I push the button?
Yeah, let's push the button.
Okay. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Yes, starting with Jeff Rath saying this, quote, I just received a call from a Stelco employee in Hamilton, Ontario. That person advised me that he was present when Mark Carney visited the Stelco steel plant in Hamilton, Ontario on March 29th, 2026. They advised that when Mark Carney was asked what he would do in the face of an Alberta independence vote, Mark Carney replied that, quote, there will be no Alberta independence because I'll invoke the Emergencies Act. This was not reported by any mainstream media outlet who were present. It demonstrates that Mark Carney has zero respect for the rule of law, the Constitution of Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada, or the Parliament of Canada. This should surprise no one, if true. I will add the caveat.
And thank you to everybody that was bringing this up last night, because as soon as we got off the air, I grabbed this for today's show. I have been calling that he's going to go use the Emergencies Act specifically for Alberta independence, and this is why he had brought it up to the Supreme Court to challenge it. That looks like that's exactly what it is, and that's been his plan for a while. Jeff Rath just got this news. That's why he's putting this out now, but this happened back on March 29th. So thank you for the whistleblower who did contact Jeff Rath, because this allows Alberta to kind of prepare for this.
Yes. And because that was just that one story, I will say hi to Harmony. Harmony says, and Clyde live in BC as well and moved to the US, or is moving. Yeah,
he's moving.
I believe so.
I'm a little bit frazzled because I was at the taco shop. I went an hour early and I gave him my ticket, and it's usually like 5 minutes to cook the taco, and I don't speak Spanish. So I'm waiting there for like 30 minutes and they end up losing my ticket. They have to get somebody to communicate with me. Anyway, I got my taco, but I had to freaking run home.
And I was getting everything ready. So I wasn't I usually go with him, but
I'm usually sitting down before the show, like 45 minutes, reviewing the story, stuff like that.
This is why you need to learn Spanish. But let's move on to Stay Free Alberta, everything that has to do with petition and how all the news on that is going.
Yeah.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And it's Alberta Stay Free.
I know, Alberta Stay Free. I always say it wrong. But starting with Marty saying, quote, "This is a powerful letter. A lot of these leaders who claim to speak on behalf of their people are really just in it for themselves. I'm proud to say I know, Darren, it takes guts to step out and write a letter like this."
Yeah, and it's going to take a minute to read this, but I think it's important to read the whole thing. Thank you to Darren for putting this out. A lot of people in the independence movement have been calling for tribal first members that aren't part of the elite that do support Alberta independence to come out with statements just like this or videos or just kind of speak up, because the narrative that's being built isn't a true narrative. It's the elites in the tribe that are trying to make a lot of hubbub in court and everything else to derail the movement. Well, the members are actually very much in support of Alberta independence, or at least a large majority.
Yes, so it says an open letter to the leaders of Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. I am a treaty Indian in Alberta. Nobody asked my opinion. Nobody asked the opinion of countless others like me, yet decisions are announced, statements are issued, and positions are blasted all over social media. What exactly about the current system is good enough for you? In fact, is it the fact that Indigenous kids make up roughly 54% of children in foster care? Is it the self-deletion rates and addiction rates, which are many times higher than the rest of the population, 8 times higher in some places? Is it that more money than ever is being spent on Indigenous issues, yet our communities are still broken, overcrowded, addicted, and dependent, with little to show for it in real infrastructure, real ownership, or real opportunity? For 150 years, chiefs from coast to coast have been bought off, managed, or absorbed into the system, and our people are the ones paying the price. The system doesn't reward results, it rewards compliance. It rewards managing poverty, not ending it. What benefit are you enjoying today that couldn't be enjoyed and exceeded on land actually owned by our people, deeded to us, not held by the federal government, and managed by chiefs who answered Ottawa before they answered to their own people? Tell me, Chief Sunshine, which treaty right are you enjoying that couldn't be exercised on land that can be developed, leveraged, passed on, and defended like everyone else's in this country? And while you're at it, explain this part too. What about the other nations in Alberta? What about our people as a whole? Shouldn't something this fundamental be discussed openly as a people? What change are you actually against? Are you against our people owning land outright? Against breaking permanent federal control? Against ending a system that has produced dependency, addiction, and despair for generations? Explain why, after 150 years, we should believe that more of the same will somehow fix what it created. Our people deserve an answer.
Well, and the members of a lot of these First Nation tribes have been getting the short end of the stick from the elites in their tribes for a long time now. Billions of dollars are going out to First Nations across Canada, $63 billion a year. That's the equivalent of what Canada spends on their military. They spend on their military $63.3 billion. So the fact that every tribal member isn't a millionaire at this point, it just shows it's going to the elites. I think the elites, in my opinion, are probably redistributing a lot of that money back to other NGOs or even other politicians. And it's a big cycle where everybody's filling their pockets except for the members of the tribe. Thank you for Darren for coming out with that statement. It's an important statement because they're going to try to use this in debates and in talking points that First Nations are against this. And this gives us something tangible to point to. And there's a lot of other First Nations members coming out with videos and statements as well. So thank you to all of them. It is a big risk on their part because they can get banned off of the reserve. There can be major consequences and they can be ostracized from their own tribal elites.
But I do think it is important to continue to hear those voices and also amplify them. If you see them or if you talk to somebody, just let others know that it is not one stream of thought and that there are people that are against what the chiefs are doing, especially when it comes backed up by the federal government, almost and actually using them for their own purposes, which is essentially what this is and what we've been saying for a long time.
Okay, I just wanted to read the whole statement. I felt it was fairly important. So usually we don't read that much, but
Let's go to Jeff Rath as well, but now talking about BC and seeing where people are actually going. Jeff Rath says, quote, BC's population shrinking, people packing up and moving to Alberta. BC is run by communists, and we can attest to that. Drabness despite gorgeous mountains. After independence, woke's leaving. Don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out, I'll have to say. But again, and we say it over and over again, yes, we left BC, yes, we became independent all by ourselves, but this was a few years ago and there was no Alberta independence movement. If there had been a movement already growing, or if we saw it as an opportunity and a chance, we would have, I think, totally gone that way instead of fully moving out as quick as we did.
The Great Migration is on, and people are moving from all across Canada to Alberta. Why? Because they were already planning to leave and move to the United States. Now they're looking at Alberta independence as the hope. They'll vote for Alberta independence, and if the vote doesn't go our way, they can always use the US or Mexico as a safety net. And I say it every time, but other people are starting to know this as well. The federal government has to be noticing too.
You know, what I think about Alberta, it's just such, and always has been, but I think more recently it's become just this wild hub of activity. It's just got a buzz going on, even more than normal. I was talking to Dallas Brody, the leader of One BC. She was on.
I met her at the Conservative Convention. I really quite enjoyed her. She's
she's pretty cool. And so I said, so she was at the convention. I said, how was that for you? She goes, I can't even believe the difference. You know, you go to a place like BC, which is run by the communists. And Manitoba, same thing, run by.
And Dallas Brody really belongs in Alberta. She is the only politician within British Columbia right now standing up against these DRIPA laws and other insane policies.
By the communists. And there's just such a drabness to it. And, you know, the background of BC is hilarious because it's beautiful there. The mountains, the trees. I mean, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous province. And yet somehow she describes a drabness in society because of the way it's governed. And Alberta is...
I read today BC's population is shrinking. And they're coming to Alberta. Right? People are packing up, selling their shit in BC and moving to Alberta.
Okay, so do you see a lot of the wokes leaving Alberta? So the population will remain the same.
And all we say is don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out.
Right? Because I'm thinking about afterwards, and I know you don't want to talk about afterwards because you're so busy working on making sure that this is a successful petition and then
they're almost done. Let's play the whole clip.
Successful referendum. But afterwards, when you win, what does the political landscape look like once we get past the United Conservative Party and the NDP? I mean, would the NDP even continue existing in an independent Alberta?
And it's absolutely fantastic because it's a double positive. You're having the great migration to Alberta from independent-minded people. Liberals and people are more of a woke ideology aren't going to get up, pack up all their stuff, and risk everything for Alberta independence or go to Alberta to vote for nationalism. People that have been disenfranchised from the federal government for the last decade are going to move there. And that's how you know the independence vote is coming to Alberta. And it looks like a lot of the woke people, not just because of Alberta independence, but because of a lot of the policies that Danielle Smith is pushing forward. They are a lot of good conservative policies. And this is disenfranchising a lot of the really woke or far, far left people within Alberta. And they're choosing to leave and go to BC. And BC is the wrong move. We just came from there. We're in Mexico now for the last 2 years. We already voted for our independence. The economy is just absolutely collapsing out there, and they should have a thriving economy, having a coastline and everything else.
Well, and I will say they will see. I mean, they will see the policies that they so much want to be applied, and what actually happens when you do listen to all the insane things that people want to pass in the woke terms, and how it ends up ruining a whole province, in this case with private property rights, but every single other thing as well.
Well, the fact is, BC and Alberta, once Alberta gets its independence, it's going to be a 1-to-1 comparison. BC has a shit ton of natural resources. I used to work in the mining industry there. They're severely underdeveloped. They could have a thriving natural resource sector, but they choose not to. They have some of it, but not to the extent that they should. They have access to the coastline, access to the United States. They have everything they need to even be more successful than Alberta. The problem is their woke ideology, their regulations, and their policies are really not only holding them back, but it's getting worse and worse every single year. Alberta, with a conservative ideology going forward and a really thriving natural resource sector, they have something strong to build on, especially as long as they have a good trading partner to the south. And Donald Trump, is opening up a lot of things and a lot of possibilities. That news kind of came out yesterday. We'll talk about it a little bit later.
And BC let all its institutions be fully captured. In Alberta, yes, some are kind of captured, but I think it will be pretty easy to fix once you're not under the thumb of the federal government and the rule that they want to impose upon the whole province.
Well, and once you implement your own constitution, as long as you have a semi-strong constitution, it's going to protect against a lot of that. At least I'm hoping so.
And I guess I will say, luckily, now you've seen what happens when you don't. And now you've seen what happens for the past few decades when the Constitution and what used to make sense for a country is completely ignored and all doubled over just on ideology and feelings. But Party Up North here also says the pro-Canada side will get 100 times more mainstream attention than the independent side. And I will add, especially with the incoming censorship bills that we're going to be seeing, C9, C22, and a bunch of other ones, the mainstream media in this country is biased and because they're paid off, and in conflict of interest because it's funded by the government in Ottawa. That's just a fact and a reality we'll have to deal with during the summer. If you want a better future for Alberta, for yourself and for your children, you're going to have to fight for it every step of the way. And the Calgary Herald starts by saying, according to Bell, Alberta separatism is real. Pro-Canada leader says it's a perfect storm.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see who's kind of stepping up now. Now there's a few figures kind of getting into the stream. We have Ninchi from the NDP. We have Jason Kinney. We have this gentleman here. It's going to be very, very important. We profile a lot of Alberta independence content creators, and they all have very small platforms right now. The ones that have really big platforms, it's because they were talking about other issues, and then they came over to Alberta independence. And I'm glad they're able to kind of bring their audience with them. But we need to grow smaller content creators. So when the summertime comes and they get 1,000 times more media coverage, we can swarm social media with a lot of those answers like, oh, Alberta is going to be landlocked. Well, we're already landlocked, or any number of other things they're going to say. We need to be able to get those answers to those questions out to the moderates to sway them over to our side in Alberta independence.
And an independent media, an independent content creator sphere that is big enough to do so, but also to win over the arguments from the pro-Canada side, which only, I think, will mostly only have the mainstream media, which, and we were talking to Marty, he was saying most people in Alberta don't even listen to mainstream media anymore because they've seen past it.
Yeah, the really good thing here for Alberta independence is there are enough content creators. There is a core group, I would say, of about 30 different content creators. A lot of them have small platforms, so we just need to grow those individual platforms by either doing interviews, going on their streams, having them come on ours, grow everybody together. This happened with conservative content creators on a national level. Polyov made sure he grew national conservative content creators. Now, it would have been great if those conservative content creators came in and supported Alberta independence, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So it's going to be up to Alberta to build their own crop of independent content creators to kind of stand up and voice Alberta independence concerns.
And to continue to expose both the positive and the negatives that will be coming from the Alberta independence movement, but also the negatives coming from the pro-Canada side and internationally as well. And that's why we're trying to reach out to international and US content creators, Mexican content creators to talk about this. So there's more of a presence of the thought of Alberta independence and the right, what's actually true versus what has been being said. For example, I still see in US media and in Mexican media, independent media saying, oh, Alberta wants to be the 51st state because they reached the referendum. So all of those debunkings have to be done by actual people that talk and live and breathe this day in, day out.
Well, and we have to realize national conservative content creators hit a critical tipping point where their channels are big enough so they can hire editors, people that are going to make their thumbnails, things like this. Everybody within Alberta independence is extremely small. They're having to do everything themselves. So you'll often see Alberta independence content creators only be on 1 or 2 platforms. If they are, then they're big, usually a little bit bigger on one platform because that's the one they focus on. So it's just really important that we hit the subscribe button for every single content creator that is talking about Alberta independence, even if we kind of disagree with them. We need to build those platforms by the summertime.
And independent journalists as well, I will say, are very important.
Absolutely. Anybody that's reporting on it and reporting on it fairly, this would be national conservative content creators as well. If they actually grow some balls and grow a backbone and start talking about Alberta independence, we need to show them some support. Get in their comments so they know that we like them talking about Alberta independence and we support them.
And again, especially when the censorship comes in, the possible Emergencies Act or any other tactic that they might try to impose upon the Alberta independence movement to stop it, that is when it becomes even more important that information can still get out, because they will do anything possible and anything they can to stop that information from going out. So we have heard a lot of sentiment a while ago, I haven't heard it in a while, of people saying, oh no, this is only Albertans should be able to talk about this. Only people within Alberta should be able to talk about this. You will, and not to be mean, but you will regret that as soon as censorship starts coming in and as soon as a narrative that they're already building coalesces and reaches the whole level of national Canada.
Nobody's going to regret it, because there's enough content creators within the Alberta independent space reaching out to national content creators, reaching out internationally. So it doesn't matter what their sentiment is. What's going to happen is people are going to continue to reach out. The reason I'm putting such a focus on this right now, it's not just for that one article. This subject has been coming up. I think we have another article in a little bit. We're going to talk about it as well.
Morgan Cameron Ross says, quote, I'm sure there are some actual Albertans out there that want to separate ensuring the 33 follower bot accounts that show up on here, though. Foreign bots are as always. And says, if you think the Alberta separation movement is organic, ask yourself why the For You section is entirely full of low follower count Alberta Freedom accounts, primarily bots, but with paid amplification foreign.
And there's no paid amplification. It's exactly the opposite. The voices aren't being amplified. They're being somewhat de-amplified. We're not a bot account. We're online 6 days a week. We're obviously two people. These are our true and authentic opinions. We don't make any money. I mean, we make a very tiny bit from AdSense from YouTube and from any super chats we get. But that being said, this is the narrative they're going to try to build, that this is an artificial movement and this is a grassroots movement. And we have to raise the voices of the content creators within this movement right now.
And the worst part is all of the accounts that he's highlighting right there are people we've either already, that's an ad, but already talked to, like John, like we have interviewed him. It's coming out this Sunday. The next one is David Parker. The next one is Marty Up North, both real people. The next one is, but that's also a real account because I've known it for Alberta as well. Like, Jeff Rath. They're all small accounts because it is an organic grassroots movement.
Well, and nobody can really afford high quality AI or anything else. So it's just talking heads and people going out to the streets with cameras. This is as grassroots and authentic a movement as it gets. And you can see that by the people that are supporting it within the content creator sphere.
But even within the court injunction from the First Nations, they also try to come out and say the whole, it's foreign people paying off the Alberta independence movement. So, and Jeff Rath came out to say, no, that's absolutely ridiculous, because if we're so, we would have a lot more money.
Well, and I can just say from personal experience, because we can see our YouTube analytics, we used to have a large US following because we used to talk geopolitics. We're almost a full Canadian following now. Specifically, almost everybody that follows this channel is from Alberta, with a few people that stuck with us from our time of talking geopolitics.
Yes. But let's actually see mainstream media in action from yesterday, I believe, or 2 days ago, from Freedom Calendar. And if you don't follow Freedom Calendar, go follow him, please, because he's great.
This was a fantastic clip. It's kind of quiet to hear. He'll come in the end and actually say what happened. But on last night's stream, I was watching Freedom Calendar because the CBC was supposed to be there. Magically, they had never showed up. I had never actually known what Freedom Calendar actually looked like as an individual. So it was good to see him. He's from somewhere in South America because he has a little bit of an accent.
Maybe, not sure.
Yeah, I wonder where he's from.
So this is what happens when the CBC tried to get a sound line from me without paying, because of course the CBC needs a sound line and they can't pay for their own.
Some CBC people wanted to connect to my soundboard, and I told them, no, you need to send an invoice. I need to send an invoice if you want to get to my soundboard. Funny. That's how you deal with those people.
That's good.
And exactly that. I mean,
that is how you deal with those people. He dealt with her nice and politely, and he just said, if you want, you're going to have to pay for it, which they're obviously going to say no, because can't get corporate approval at that time. And it's just a way to shut them down. But make sure when we shut them down, we do it in a polite and friendly manner.
Because again, we are all able to put ourselves above them because all they do is insults, and that's the only tactics they know because they come from emotion, not from logic.
Well,
so when you come from emotion, of course, you're going to be incredibly rude and violent instead of having the open discussion because you know you're on the losing side.
Well, I don't think she was rude and violent there.
No, not her. But I mean, in general, when we see people attacking canvassers or going after canvassers, being called traitors, being called X, Y, Z, all the names that we have and will continue to be called, that marks the difference. It's because they're not coming from logic, they're coming from emotion.
Well, she wants access to that soundboard so she can get sound bites so they can use it on national news to denigrate the Alberta independence movement. So why help them in any way, shape, or form?
But also incredibly disrespectful to somebody that has it's all his equipment. He set it up. He does everything. If someone else were to ask the CBC for a sound line and if they could connect to their soundboard, they would say, of course not. This is a business. How dare you? You couldn't even offer to pay to get connected to their soundboard. So again, it is incredibly rude, and that just shows how they see the independent people that are actually out there working. What?
I don't think there was any sound.
There is. People are commenting.
Oh, no, there was. Sorry, I thought on our clips there was maybe no sound because we're having trouble with the audio and clips. Funny that I brought up the audio right when it was Freedom Calendar because he does audio.
Yes, but moving on. National Post says, quote, province has been pushing the limits of their power on issues generally considered the exclusive domain of the federal government.
Sorry, reread that. I was checking the audio.
National Post says, quote, the province has been pushing the limits of their power on issues generally considered the exclusive domain of the federal government.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we want to see from Danielle Smith, trying to build the best safety net she can on a provincial and national level in case the vote doesn't go our way. Also, this is going to counteract a lot of what Carney wants to do. Carney wants to federalize everything and take sovereignty away from provinces. He's already stated as much. He has a majority, so that's exactly what he's going to do. If no premier stands up to build a framework on how you push back against a majority government, the entire country is going to be federalized and provinces are no longer going to have sovereignty. So good on Danielle Smith. Keep up the good work she's been doing. I know sometimes people in Alberta independence can be hard on her, but she is the one that lowered the number of signatures that we needed, and she unmuddled the water after she muddled it with the 9 questions. So she's been walking a good line and letting democracy go forward, saying there are a lot of grievances in Alberta and Albertans need a voice through democracy and there should be a vote.
And if she can continue to push and continue down that line of pushing democracy and trying to make sure that democracy does still stand, I think she will be very important and even, as I've said, put in history textbooks once Alberta becomes independent because she was able to maintain what actual democracy means as the federal government tries to impose the complete opposite as well.
Well, if Pierre Poilievre goes forward, he's going to try to, if Carney taps him on the shoulder and says, we need you to put Canada first and shut down Alberta independence, and he's already been saying, oh, we have to put Canada first. I'm not going to disrespect Mark Carney. And he was really unwilling to take off the gloves there. That being said, Danielle Smith is in a very nice spot right now because she's saying democracy is what needs to go first. And if national content creators do come around to Alberta independence, she's going to quickly become the most prominent national conservative, even more prominent than Pierre Poilievre, because this is a defining moment in Albertan history.
And thank you so much to Phillips Oilio. Please let me know if I'm saying the name right for the $5 super chat.
Thank you.
Saying you have and always will have American support. More you know, no worries. So thank you so much for that.
That was an American then.
Yeah, so from Louisiana. He was here yesterday.
Yeah, he was here yesterday as well.
Thank you.
So thank you a lot. We do have a lot of our old subscribers that have come over and stuck with us with Alberta independence. And I'm hoping we can grow the support within the United States and the population.
And the interest within the U.S. as well. People talking and seeing Alberta independence for what it actually is.
Well, there's a big misnomer in the United States because a lot of people in the U.S. do think Alberta wants to be the 51st state. And we try to make it very clear. We don't want to be the 51st state, not because we don't think America is a great country, but conservatives, even in the United States, understand it can be a very bipolar country. And every 4 or 8 years, you can get somebody like a Biden or a Newsom. And Alberta doesn't want to be in that spot, especially because they've consistently voted conservative for the last 93 years. That's a big benefit once they get their independence.
Yes. But thank you so much. And thank you for clarifying that, yes, American support from Louisiana. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to the whole show as well.
And Alberta, just to clarify, most Albertans and everybody in Alberta really do love Americans, and we have a good trading relationship with them. It's the rest of Canada that has an axe to grind with the U.S.
Yes, especially now that is the only talking point both Mark Carney and the mainstream media that most of the lemmings still listen to have.
Yeah.
To the point of saying, oh, the U.S. is going to invade. Go to Mexico. Go on vacation to Mexico. And then they see what actually happens in Mexico and what happened in Puerto Vallarta in January. So
okay, let's continue on here.
Do you want to introduce this one? Because you know more about this than I do.
Well, I don't know what it is until you bring it up.
So this is Talking to Albertans, or John Alberta Patriot on X. We do have an interview with him coming out on Sunday.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this because this issue is coming up in Alberta independence, and it's one of those issues where there's a wide-ranging variety of opinions on the thing. John has a much different opinion than the Fringe does than I do. Let's play it and see what he has to say. And we're going to talk about immigration here. And going forward, there isn't a hard policy on immigration yet. And I think it's going to come out through talks and negotiations. So I'm glad the topic's coming out now so we can discuss it.
So this is his video saying, my position on immigration in an independent Alberta after Unacceptable Fringe's video about him.
Hey guys, support for Alberta independence. And there's a Let's Talk event that is happening right now. And I actually came out here because I thought that CBC was going to be here. But apparently we kind of jumped the gun on it, and we published too much on the internet. And I think next time we do this, because they chickened out. They obviously don't want to. They're like, this isn't in our best interest to publish, a large event like this in a small town like Delburn. So, but that's not what I want to talk about actually in this video. I want to talk about immigration. And recently, Unacceptable Fringe published a video about this, and I just want to give some comments and some feedback. And I just want to say right off the hop, Fringe, man, you did a great job, okay? You treated me fair, and you represented what I said fairly. And I think you picked a couple of comments that people in my section, they probably didn't watch the whole video, okay?
Can you pause it for a second?
And so I want to just kind of...
And John's an extremely nice guy. He was very generous with his time and didn't hold back when we interviewed him. So thank you for John with the interview. We're going to continue to play this for a little bit. There are going to be differences of opinion when it does come to immigration. It's going to be a very confrontational issue, I think, within Alberta independence. Now is the time for unity. And when we go into the negotiations for what's in the Constitution and how we want to treat immigration, we can kind of negotiate then. That being said, I'm pretty hard-nosed on immigration. People probably know my opinions about it. I'm more worried about, or most worried about, ideological capture of Alberta once other Canadians want to come into Alberta after they get their independence. People that are coming before the separation and want to vote for independence, those are people that you want within that voting bloc. You don't want to see what happened to British Columbia through Vancouver and Victoria, basically having control of the entire province, even though the people in the north and the interior don't agree with them, happen to Alberta. We already see that kind of happening in Calgary, where the NDP have a strong foothold. If that continues, Alberta has a real chance to become something like BC does. And I don't want to see that, but I can appreciate John's perspective here. And I'm more than willing to entertain the conversation, and we should be having an open dialogue about this.
Get the record straight about what my actual opinion is on immigration. And this gentleman here, what's your name again?
Hi, John. I'm Blaine.
Hey, Blaine. So this gentleman here, he asked me what my opinion is on independence. So I was going to tell you what I think. So obviously, I'm against mass immigration. Okay, like if you're illegally in this country or if you're a criminal, you should get the heck out of here.
Oh, on the first bus?
Yeah, like I think everybody agrees with that.
I think so.
Yeah. And so my concern is about mass deportations. And I think there's, when people hear this word, they're like, impulsive. They're like, yeah, just deport everybody. So criminals and illegals, yeah, deport them. That's my opinion.
Well, if you're here illegally,
yeah,
and you're breaking our laws,
absolutely,
it's time for you to go.
Yeah,
and not to be get jail
Right.
or bail, not jail, and go out and do it again.
Yeah.
So no, I'm sick of that.
Yeah. And so now I think where the nuance comes in for me, because the Alberta Prosperity Project published the Value of Freedom document, which I've been reading. Go check out the link in below. If you want to see line by line, I read through the whole thing. You'll hear my comments. But there's a proposal to go back about 5 years and then scrutinize all the people who are here currently in the province, and then like reevaluate everybody. And so my opinion is, if you're illegal or you committed crimes, you're just out. I have no doubt about that.
Okay, and we can
But
leave
where
it there. It's
kinda
a very
draw
good video, and you can really see what one side of the opinion is within the independence movement. I highly recommend going to watch it. One thing I did disagree with John there was people on refugee status. I don't want to see any refugees allowed into Alberta. That's my opinion. I'm going to speak my opinion. That being said, there's one way I'm allowed to have I think is an acceptable way to have exceptions to refugees. And that is when we go into negotiations with Canada, I don't want that ordeal to be lengthened out. I want it to be over and done within 6 months, hopefully 12 months at the longest. The Canadian government knows that may be a sticking point for independence. So I would say anybody that's a refugee within Alberta, if it means speeding up the negotiations to a 6-month process, just allow them all into the country, because you're going to control your immigration going forward, and you can stop any further refugees from coming into the country. That's just my personal opinion. I understand a lot of people don't have the opinion that I have, and it's a lot more nuanced when I go into the broad scope of what I think about immigration totally, but I'm fairly hard-nosed on immigration. I think a lot of people within Alberta independence are, but
because we've seen the effects of it. And not to use this line because I hate this line, but as an immigrant myself that arrived in Canada in 2011, I did see the whole process and the whole notion of what immigration even meant for Canada change under Trudeau and the Liberals. We saw the explosion of it. We saw how they wanted to continue to maximize the numbers to increase the GDP without really thinking or even working on infrastructure, housing, and the cost of living crisis. Everything else was not worked on, but they just wanted to bring more and more people in. And also because I have a sort of insider's view, because I do know the Latin community, the Mexican community, and a bunch of other different communities that are immigrants within Canada, I have seen the system be completely taken advantage of by people I know that I like and I love. Not very close friends, but people that are friends of friends and stuff that overstayed visas, overstayed student visas, went on a student visa but never left and pretended that they weren't working when they were. And I've seen a lot of, and again, I had friends that worked for the Mexican government in Vancouver for the consulate, and they would tell me all the time stories of both human trafficking, essentially, so like lying to people, telling them they'd get jobs and then taking their passports away, all of that ugly, murky business, but also people that would find the best ways to stay and the best lies to tell so they could stay. So I've seen that side of it as well. People that have gotten married and then just to get Canadian citizenship by people that also immigrated to Canada, and that chain that continues to be built. So I guess I'm even harder nosed on that. And I would say go back 10 years and look into all of it, because it hasn't been looked into for the past, I would say, 15 years.
yeah.
And it's been way too lax, especially now when you can essentially get citizenship online.
Yeah, but what I will say is there has to be a caveat here. Even if we want to be hard-nosed on immigration going forward, at the founding, when we're in negotiations for Canada, if Canada knows they can delay the negotiations by saying, oh, you want to try to send all these immigrants back to us, but we can't afford to have them, we don't want to have them, and they're going to do that as a delay tactic because they want to wait till Trump's out of office. We need to push the negotiations forward while Trump's in office so we can secure long-term national resource contracts under Trump for the survival of Alberta. So we may have to be a little lax with people that are already or in the process of immigrating to Alberta at the founding. But after the founding and after we go forward, I think we should have hard-nosed immigration policies. That's just my opinion.
But also seeing and living it on this side now, because you here in Mexico, the process to be in Mexico as a temporary, then permanent, then become a citizen maybe, is really, really hard. And doing that comparison between how it was in Canada versus here, even for Mexico, it's really hard to immigrate to Mexico, and you need a bunch of different paperwork. And yet, it is always the Western first world, or countries that still believe they're first world countries, that make it the easiest to get in and don't want to deal with the consequences of it.
Well, and I will say one other thing here. John is a content creator, and he's putting his ass on the line every single day, or a lot of days. He's out there on the streets talking about Alberta independence, really pushing this thing forward. He's also a petitioner. We talked to him about that on our interview. His wife is an immigrant, and I'll say this: if Alberta independence doesn't go through and the federal government starts coming after content creators, they're going to be coming after people like John. So if we do get our independence, specifically his wife should automatically get citizenship there. Period.
If she doesn't have it.
Absolutely, period. Because he's putting his ass on the line for Alberta independence to push this thing forward, like a lot of other people in Alberta are.
And again, I spent 13 years there, and I still don't have citizenship. For Canada. Not that I'm too interested in it, but again, it was 13 years that now I see as wasted of my life.
Well, and I will say the immigration coming to Mexico is extremely hard. And if you look 10 years ago, it was even harder. I mean, they had some of the hardest nosed immigration in the world. It's actually shocking to me. Mm-hmm. But that being said, if Mexico can have hard immigration, there's no reason Alberta can't. And Canada, when I see a lot of people within Alberta independence, they don't want to be seen as the bad guy when it comes to immigration. And sometimes you're just going to have to be seen as the bad guy in order to build a strong foundation.
But it's that same thing where people have gotten used to the way things have been, even if those things have not been working out for the country or for the people. Think about the health. Think about the health whole infrastructure in Canada, how it's completely broken, and people still want to cheer it on because that's the only thing they know, and they don't want to look outside of it because they think it's the best thing there is, and that Canada is the best thing in the world. And I think maybe some people are still used to the way that immigration has been working in Canada, and how they've been in a way indoctrinated into thinking that is the nice, polite way to be a nice multicultural country. And that might be some sticking points that are still in their brains and they haven't been able to move past yet. But when you do, and when you look at it, it is at least part of the answer as to a lot of the issues that still go on within Canada and even Alberta.
Well, I'll say a lot of new Canadians that have just gotten their citizenship are very much in favor of Alberta independence. Surprisingly, John had even gave a story about when he went into, I believe it was a Sikh household or something like that, got 9 signatures from that one household. A lot of people that have come from other countries realize that independence is the way forward, and they see the direction of Canada. And some of those people that already have their citizenship are the hardest people on other immigrants trying to immigrate illegally. That's why we've seen so many groups like Hispanics, like Asians vote for Trump in mass the last election.
Yeah. Latinos.
Okay. Yeah, let's keep going forward.
We're reading comments.
Yeah, we're going to read some comments, then we're going to go into Alberta politics. I kind of brought that subject matter up because it's coming up within Alberta independence right now, fairly heavy.
And it is one of those things you do have to talk about, and you do have to have the open and honest debates on. You can't just say, oh, I think this person thinks that, so I'm going to go against them or against that. And especially now, before Alberta independence, it is about having the debates, but not fully, deciding and saying this is the way it's going to be.
Well, and I would say on 90 to 95% of issues within Alberta independence, everybody seems to agree, but there is that 5 to 10% of issues, and this happens to be one of them, where there's two sides of the spectrum, and then there's some people in between. So it's one of those issues that we do want to talk about, but we want to make sure that we don't get distracted by it.
You got very intense there.
Yeah.
Canuck says, hello, Nat and the guy. I hope your day has gone good. Yes, thank you. And same to you. Hold on. Niall Norman says, a lot of chiefs are corrupt, but we have to acknowledge the good chiefs that take care of their people. Yes. And not again, same as what we were just talking about, not generalize, but look at the actual issue for what it is, instead of trying to hide it in one way or the other.
Well, yeah, we should be pointing out good chiefs and say, this is the way it is done. And why are all these other chiefs handling it different ways? And why are there so much corruption in these other tribes? Mm-hmm. Use the good chiefs as examples to point out the way it should be, to kind of weed out the bad ones.
And that it is possible and that it has been done. Hold on. Jerry Conspiracy says abolish the NGOs, MPOs, Global Affairs, Foreign, and Laundromat 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trump is trying to do a lot of that. When he defunded USAID, that was a huge move. People don't realize how many billions upon billions of dollars that actually total up to trillions after a few years.
James B says, hit the like button, guys. Thank you so much, James. Always reminding us to say it again and again. Glenn Gunn says, Free Alberta will make the audit for all. The rats will show themselves for the First Nations, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Troglodyte says, one BC chief made $950,000 in 1 year tax-free.
And that's just on the books in front of what we know. We don't know what's going into his pockets behind the scenes.
Glenn Gunn says, housing here is booming in Alberta. And James B says,
Wait, one second. Housing in Alberta is booming, but man, there's a lot of bad construction happening, not just in Alberta, but Canada-wide. The construction standards need to come way up. The materials need to come way up, especially in cold weather environments. They're selling houses to individuals that it will take the individual their entire lifetime to pay off, but the house is going to start molding and falling apart after 15 or 20 years.
Yes, and hold on. James B says that he actually can move to Ontario. I'm sure that he'd be way happier there anyways. Troglodyte says, my grandparents retired to Calgary in the 60s, well ahead of the curve.
Good to hear.
Hold on. Glenn Gunn says, I bought my first house in 1989 for $112,700.
112,000. Yeah, he's going to make a lot of money on the house if he sells it today.
Yeah.
And I want to say one more thing about housing. Once Alberta gets its independence, housing shouldn't be something that continuously goes up, that people are profiting off of, and that's their retirement. It needs to be for the younger generation coming up. Housing needs to be cheap. It needs to be made in abundance, and it needs to be made to last so it can be handed from one generation to the next. Every new generation shouldn't have to buy a new home. They should be able to inherit their family home. That way, you really get this sense of family, and it's easier to build family units and things like that.
Exactly. Troglodyte says BC NDP with First Nations have crushed our industries.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous the foothold the NDP has been able to get with inside of Calgary.
Mm-hmm. Then Smile to Everyday Life says, awesome letter, the one we read from.
Yeah. And thank you again to Darren for writing that letter, because it takes a lot of courage to do things like that.
Also says Alberta first. And hold on. Smile to Life Every Day says John from his channel Talking with Albertans has some good interviews with Indigenous people with their thoughts. Yeah, and we've tried to profile some of them as well, because we continue to say it's good to hear from the people directly. Many times they're not even almost allowed to speak. So it's good when they do come out and interview and have that bravery that they have to be able to do so.
Yeah, John is one of the most important voices within the Alberta independence movement, because he is going out to the streets and he is doing those on the street interviews, and he is a bigger guy, so he can do that. A lot of people aren't able to do that, and he's doing it in a nice way. Even though he's a bigger guy, he's trying to be as nice as possible when he approaches people, so he's non-threatening.
Mm-hmm. Jerry Conspiracy says Alberta will be making history for our history books in the future. Yeah. And you'll be able to see that actual history will be written in those, not what the curriculum currently is in most of Canada, which is lies, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting rid of actual history. Glenn Gunn says, don't like Fringe that went after him.
Oh,
don't like that Fringe went after him.
No,
after John.
I don't either. And I think me and John, we agree on some immigration policies and we disagree, and we can kind of have it out. And yeah.
In a polite, debateful manner. James B says,
my opinion isn't going to be right for everything, but I'm going to have an opinion on everything probably.
And as I always say, at least for myself, I know less than I know more. And I always say, use your critical thinking skills. Don't believe anybody 100%. Look into it for yourself and build your own ways of thinking and modes of thinking and resources and etc. and your own opinions. Because we've forgotten about how to do that. James B says, just like in any court case, those allegations need to be proven. Otherwise, it is not accepted as a truth of any kind. The whole interference claims that they brought up. Jerry Conspiracy says, stay free Alberta is stay free from libtards' debt. There is much. Canuck says, stay strong Alberta. I want to get to the immigration ones. Hold on.
Well, and there was another thing John brought up in the interview. I think we kind of disagreed on it, but I like the fact that the conversation is getting brought up, and it was, once Alberta gets its independence, if it's done on a point scale, so should people that are born within Canada get more people that are citizens but weren't born inside of Canada to immigrate to Alberta? And I thought that was a fantastic question, and it brings up a diverse sector of opinions there. Me personally, I think if you are born in Canada, you should get more points if it's a point system for immigration.
Jerry Conspiracy says, next year I will move to Saskatchewan and vote to join the Freedom from Ottawa.
Yeah, and we're going to be continuing, I hope,
Talking about
Saskatchewan really gets their ball rolling and starts moving towards independence. Because as soon as Alberta independence is done, or even if Saskatchewan gets it rolling before, we'll be covering both subjects because they're interlinked and they're important to be that 1-2 push to the federal government so they don't know what's coming at them.
Yes, Chocolate says Alberta has the same resolve that allowed Canadians to take Vimy Ridge when no one else could. True. They haven't forgotten about that resolve as many of the other Canadians actually have done. Sam asks, who's on your interview tomorrow? We're interviewing tonight, someone.
Yeah, well, we'll keep it a surprise until we release it. We're going to release that one on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we have John talking to Albertans, so we just kind
This Sunday.
This Sunday, yeah.
Harmony says Danielle Smith did 2 strong comments in regard to Nenshi and his trips and connections to the WEF. And I'm sure there's more more there than she has said. Glengun says, we will be fine. You may need you all to say we have the right to separate. Yes.
Read that again.
We will be fine. May need you all to say we have the right to separate.
Yeah.
Canuck says Alberta has a right to separate and be independent. Yes, it does. And it's written in the Constitution. People have forgotten about that as well.
And we do have a lot of content creators and stuff that kind of watch us casually. And I still once in a while see, and we used to make the same mistake. We used to always call it Alberta separation. It's Alberta independence. And I think that does make a big difference, especially when trying to set a narrative going forward to the summertime. Separation has a negative connotation, while independence has a positive one. That it can mean somewhat the same thing. I understand when people are saying it, but there needs to be a real effort to call it Alberta independence. And that's why we even changed a lot of our thumbnails and things like that.
Yes, Canuck says, I have no issues with the USA. And Troglodyte says, I love the US Constitution and Bill of Rights, and I think it is a great document, but it still has some errors. Every document, every single thing will have some errors. And that is why building a new nation with an independent Alberta is so interesting also to me, because you can now see what has and hasn't worked and then what to do moving forward.
Well, and language also changes over time. There needs to be clarifying documents that go with the Constitution. So in the future, people know what was meant by the Constitution. There's similar documents that forms the U.S. Constitution, but they seem to ignore those these days. The
Federalist Papers are some of them, yes.
Yeah.
Canuck says, I have family out there. Same. And Michael Drader, hello, says, short of a GOP supermajority in the Senate, Alberta would only become a U.S. state if Puerto Rico also joins. Because they have to approve it, yeah.
I'm in no way, shape, or form in favor of Alberta becoming a U.S. state. Now, being a U.S. state would be better than being part of Canada, but I am in no way wanting Alberta to be a part of the U.S. I love the U.S. I grew up there a lot. I spent half my life there. That being said, the U.S. is very bipolar, especially in its ideology. Alberta has been consistent for 93 years of conservatism, and that is a big benefit when going into a government structure.
I'll read 2 more and then we'll go into Alberta politics, and then I guess we'll get to all the ones about immigration. James Isle, hello, says, let's start using when, not if. And that's what I continue to try to correct myself on, to say when Alberta becomes independent, because it will.
Yeah.
And it'll be.
I still make that same mistake as well. But saying independence and saying when instead of if, absolutely right. That's the context we need to speak in.
Philippe Solio says, very welcome, always a pleasure, again from Louisiana. So thank you for being here. Now let's move on to Alberta politics. Try to get through that one quickly so we can get back into the comments.
Okay.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Okay, 1 second. We're gonna go through maybe 3 of these stories in Alberta politics, and there were really good comments about Alberta immigration, and I think that's an important dialogue to have. So we'll read comments halfway through the politics section.
Just because I didn't get to them all of them. But let's start with this. Rise of Alberta says, quote, every time Washington moves faster to support Alberta energy than Ottawa does, the case for Alberta independence gets stronger. At this point, it is no longer theoretical. Canada is the obstacle to Alberta's prosperity. Independence is how we clear the path. And it says, drill baby drill, quote, Trump approves permits for pipelines moving oil between Alberta and the U.S.
Yeah, and he just approved this yesterday, which is absolutely fantastic. The U.S. is now making moves off the chessboard without being so brazen about it. They had the interview with Jasmine Lane yesterday where they say Carney really hasn't been negotiating for the past year and he's not doing this in good faith. And now we have this from Trump kind of clearing the way for either Danielle Smith to have the pipeline, or if Alberta gets its independence, for Alberta to directly negotiate with the United States for that pipeline. Either way, it's good. I would prefer no pipelines until after independence. But I can understand building that safety net can be important as well.
Yes, but again, especially now, the U.S. is becoming even more of an important player with what's happening internationally and geopolitically as well. And Alberta could really have a say in that once it becomes independent.
Yeah.
And be a very important key part of the chess move as well. Okay, we did get this video, and a lot of you also mentioned this video from yesterday by Keith Wilson, saying, quote, Carney now has an unelected Liberal majority, and for many Albertans, this is another sign the system is not working. This new video lays out why that matters and what it means for Alberta, and why more people are talking.
Well, again, another absolutely fantastic message coming out from the leader of Alberta Independence. Now, I know he says he's not, but in my opinion, he's the unofficial leader. And if he wants to be, he'll be president of Alberta. I plan to play the whole video. We're running a little bit behind on time, and we do have an interview at 7. We'll play maybe half of it. And yeah, let's listen to what Mr. Keith Wilson has to say.
Well, we've had some significant events in the last few days, one of which is with the by-elections and, more importantly, the floor crossings. The Carney Liberals have secured the first unelected majority government in Canadian history. And it's a glaring reminder for Albertans who are concerned about our future and the future of our kids and grandkids that we're not going to vote our way out of this situation. And what I mean by that is we know that in Alberta, we have taxation without representation. We have Ottawa making policies and laws that we don't agree with, that are harmful to our economy, harmful to our social structure, and we have no ability to change that because the voting is skewed where people in central and eastern Canada get more votes and more ability to elect MPs than we do here in Alberta. So what our starting point was that the structure of Canada under the Constitution isn't fair to Alberta. There's an imbalance. There's a glaring
and pause it for a second.
Imbalance.
And we've all kind of heard this talked about, but it's crucially important now, especially because Mark Carney has a majority government and he's starting to attempt to consolidate power and federalize power away from provinces. They're not going to want to give that up. This is something they're not going to be able to fix, is the imbalance of political power baked into Canada. So it's something we should focus on going forward.
And it's now compounded by the Carney Liberals legitimizing floor crossing on a scale we've never seen before, securing a majority through doing it outside of the normal electoral process. And it shows your vote doesn't matter. Even in Ontario now, if you're a Conservative, your vote doesn't matter. I just got an email from the Conservative Party of Canada saying the subject line was, your vote matters. Well, no, it doesn't. Not if you're in a riding where you vote, support a Conservative platform and vote that person into office. And all that has to happen is they get enticed by whatever happened behind closed doors to cross and join the other party. So when we look at what's happening in Ottawa, when we look at what's happening with the recent election, it's confirmation yet again that Albertans are not going to vote their way out of this problem. There's a legal pathway through which Alberta can become independent, and we can have full constitutional control of all aspects of the role of government in our lives, government laws and policies. One of which is to unleash the world's third largest reserve of oil and gas.
Okay, and you can leave it there. He does go into the economy and some really, really good stuff. I highly recommend watching any video Keith Wilson does, but especially that one.
And especially the updates as well, because, I mean, he is on the inside.
Yeah. The next story is actually a little bit long, and it's... I think it's pretty long and it's very important. It's very prevalent to Alberta. Why don't we go into some comments before we head into that story? Because you said you had some comments about immigration.
Yes, I think so, if I can get to them. Primors 007 says French has been getting more and more arrogant in what he has said as of late. Seems like his head is swelling a little bit too much. Hate it when people argue for no reason when on the same side. And I think that last bit is the most important bit. Like right now, the arguments, etc. You can patch that out once Alberta is independent. But it is important to stay focused and on target, I would say.
Yeah, and I like the Fringe. I actually watch him on a daily basis. He gets the news sometimes faster than we do. And I have absolutely no problem with the Fringe. especially because he is the biggest voice within Alberta independence right now. He used to cover national politics, so he carried that audience over to Alberta independence, and they don't seem to have left him, which is fantastic. He's one of those few creators that can talk to a national audience as well, and he has a lot of Americans that watch him too. So the Fringe is a very important figure within Alberta independence, but I really, really do like John, and he is a crucial voice within the grassroots movement because of the very unique kind of content he makes. And we're not all going to agree on everything, but we should be able to put our differences aside for Alberta independence.
Yes, and because you talked too slow, one of the comments went away. Troglodyte says,
sorry.
Parizeau called out immigration when Quebec lost in 1984.
Oh, read that again?
Parizeau called out immigration when Quebec lost in 1984.
Yeah, and immigration, hard-nosed immigration policies for Quebec, if they ever do get their independence, is extremely important because they do have a very unique cultural identity. I don't necessarily like French, but they do have their own language as well.
Jerry Conspiracy says, refugee asylum seekers get $82,000 a month per year as a Canadian. I never made that amount from working full-time. I never made that as an immigrant either.
Yeah, and this
I
is
came
why.
in before.
And this is why people don't want anybody with refugee status within the country because of all the stories that have come out and how the Canadian government has treated them with preferential treatment over the last few years.
Silverfeet, because otherwise they disappear.
Okay.
Silverfeet says it's all PR workers post 2015 will need to reapply for their status. This is 100% needed, and I do agree with that as well. Hold on, then they're fighting about stuff. Michael says Spanish is hard enough, but I want to get to the other immigration ones.
Okay.
Problem is, yeah, Sean says, and I agree with this, problem is to define political refugee. Being a descendant of refugees, I like real refugees. My grandmother left the Soviet Union, specifically Ukraine, and she never went back because she was a refugee.
Yeah, what I want to see is a no refugee policy. And let me caveat that because I want a no refugee policy because refugees are being weaponized against countries right now to absolutely flood them and denigrate their national identity. So if we have a policy of no refugees, and then we can caveat with, well, if we want to let a group of refugees, like say we agree that Ukrainian refugees would fit in well in Alberta, and we want to allow a certain number of them in, we can pass a specialty bill that says, okay, we're going to allow 3,000 Ukrainian refugees in this one time because of this purpose. But after that one bill passes, we go back to no refugee policy. And anytime you want to let in any small group of refugees, a specialty bill would have to be passed. I think the general policy needs to be no refugees because it's been weaponized.
But also the people that continue to say, no, we have to be kind to the rest of the world, blah, 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 blah. They don't want to look at how it has been weaponized. They don't want to look into it. They don't even want to admit it when there's clear and obvious examples now all over the world where the whole refugee asylum seeker status has been either weaponized or taken advantage of. And people have to remember others from other cultures as well do take advantage of things just like we do, just like everybody else does. So putting this very, oh no, they could never do that thought in your mind, you have to kind of take that out and say they're human too.
And you also have to realize as soon as Alberta gets its independence, Canada is in a much different position. They're looking at Alberta, which is up here with their economy. Canada is going to be down here, and they're going to want to make Alberta subservient to them, even if it takes 20 years. Slowly over time, they're going to want to break Alberta down through immigration and a certain voting bloc, so that voting bloc will agree with national Canada more, and it will bring them in alignment with national Canada, even though they're independent. So immigration is something I personally just have hard-nosed policies on because I've seen how it's destroyed conservative states, conservative countries. Hungary's going to go through that transition now because of their new president. Even though he claims to be conservative, it's a globalist plant at this point.
Well, and for me, it's because I've seen it firsthand. I've seen firsthand how people do take advantage of the immigration system and even laugh about it. Well, other people like me try to go and do it the right, correct way, and it's been 13 years and I'm still not a citizen. Not that I want to be basically anymore, but it is frustrating as well. So I do understand that side of the immigrants that say, hey, I did it. I did everything I had to do, I paid my full tuition as an international student. I found a job that fit into the blah, blah, blah. And then seeing people that went the opposite direction and did better than you, essentially. Troglodyte says, my wife's grandmother came from Ukraine. Her husband faced imprisonment after World War I for being from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His family assimilated after homesteading in Mayfair, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we also have to realize who are we allowed allowing to immigrate to the country. And there has to be a hard talk about what does it mean to be Albertan? What is the founding of Alberta as a Western nation? And Christianity has a huge part of that identity within the scientific community, within the law community, within a lot of the founding principles of not only Canada, the United States, but all the West. When you allow large immigration blocks from places like China or India, they don't have those same fundamental principles. So it's a lot harder to get them to integrate. The best way to get people to integrate and the best kind of immigration, which I think is through marriage. And when you look at the statistics through marriage, what you see is when somebody immigrates through marriage, they have somebody 24 hours a day or for a large portion of every day to help them integrate into that society and understand the fundamental principles of that society. So I think immigration through marriage is something that should be welcomed into most countries, especially Alberta.
That Lorman says PJ the Belt just said the U.S. just endorsed Alberta and Saskatchewan independence.
That's fantastic because he made another video yesterday. It was the one about what Jeff Rath had said, and it was a concerning video. PJ the Belt's absolutely fantastic.
Hold on.
Okay, let's go back.
David Bird says, I think we need more advertising showing all the benefits of Alberta independence. And I agree. And I think during the campaigning, the next phase, which is the campaigning phase of Alberta independence before the referendum, a lot of that and a lot of more information can be gained through debate, speaking, but also, as you say, advertising.
Well, and
education of the people.
Well, and the Centurion Project is really kind of taking that up. They're looking for leadership within the Alberta independence movement that can talk to larger groups and get that education out there. And they're asking the important questions of what are the responsibilities and duties of citizens? Because most countries tell you what the rights of citizens are, but they don't put any duties on the citizens. And I think that's a good paradigm shift. And that kind of conversation has come up within the conservative debate sphere for the last 5 or 10 years, but no nation has taken that on as a project yet.
So sorry, Sean, I hadn't seen it. Thank you so much for the $1.99 super chat asking, guys, so Alberta does not have a parliamentary system?
No.
Worst idea.
Yeah, that's the worst idea.
We've seen how that works.
Yeah.
UK, every single place that has a parliamentary system, at least now, it has been broken down and taken advantage of.
Yeah, there's a couple strings of thought. One is we would go back to the Canadian system before Justin Trudeau's dad, where he made major reforms. I completely disagree with that. I think that's a bad idea. Most people think that's a bad idea. The most popular strain of thought right now is to take the 1776 version of the United States Constitution and implement something like that with a few minor adjustments. There's also other strains of thought that are a little bit more libertarian, like Bruce Party. I actually like a lot of those ideas that changes the stance of the power of government and the power of citizens and kind of reverses that, which I do like. But a lot of this still has to be worked out. I don't like the parliamentary system, and I think a lot of people in Alberta don't either.
Because we've seen, again, how it can be taken advantage of. But now going back to the stories, so 3 more and then we'll go back to comments. Mocha, I can never say his last name, Bizargran, I'm going to say. Quote, illegal mining amid missing taxpayer revenue and tax hikes, Empress now considers dissolution. Alberta Environment and Protected Areas confirms that, quote, the pit was operating outside the approved boundary, contradicting the earlier cover-up by former Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver, who...
Oh, we can go right into the video because he's going to explain a lot of this for us. And this was a good report by Mocha, doing fantastic work within Alberta here. And these are the kinds of stories that are really going unheard right now because Alberta independence is so prominent within Alberta. But I'm glad he shined a light on this.
Alberta Environment has confirmed that mining operations in the village of Empress occurred outside approved boundaries, meaning they were illegal. The village, which appears to have lost more than $3 million in taxpayer revenue, according to financial statements and geomatic studies, is in financial trouble and is considering dissolution.
This is a legal mine. They have an exclusive right to mine in the area. For every ton removed, a royalty is paid to the village of Empress. Right next to it, however, is an illegal mine, one that operates completely off the books. According to residents, trucks have been coming and going daily for years, but no one, including the village, can explain who is operating it and where the money is going.
I don't see no pink money coming in, but I see a lot of gravel leaving.
According to former Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver, the hole you are seeing with your very own eyes right now does not exist because it does not exist on paper. But now, according to Alberta Environment, the aggregate pit is indeed operating outside approved boundaries, meaning illegally.
We would like to acknowledge that Alberta
And pause
includes
it.
traditional territories with the signatory.
And why this is an important story is because if we start to deregulate the natural resource industry, which is obviously a want and need for Alberta once they get their independence, we need to watch for things like this. We need to build in, transparency, and we need to build in at least oversight over a lot of this.
And now, amid financial troubles, the village of Empress is considering dissolution.
We're not here to change the past, but we can't do that.
Empress, a village of roughly 50 Albertans located northeast of Medicine Hat, near the Saskatchewan border, successfully petitioned the government of Alberta to begin a viability review that will assess whether the village can remain financially sustainable or should dissolve into the special areas. The village is in financial trouble, with the municipal general levy increasing by about 46% between 2024 and 2025. Prompting stress among some residents.
And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather your thoughts and
And
opinions.
pause it one more time. That levy on the city increasing by almost 50%, that is a perfect time to get signatures in and push Alberta independence, because that 46% can come right back down off the top.
Review process and not to address any outstanding grievances or any other issues.
Advisors from Municipal Affairs met with the village at the community hall on Monday in an interactive meeting, distributing colorful papers, asking them to write what they like about living in Empress, reminiscing, some residents, of their days from elementary school. While most residents participated, a few left the hall early, disappointed in the format, expecting the meeting to be about the millions of dollars of missing taxpayer revenue from the illegal mining operation, and not about sitting around tables to do small talk. Don't touch my camera. Don't touch my camera. Move. Unlike last time, I was not illegally discriminated against as a punishment for having reported on the missing taxpayer revenue and was allowed to be present to record the public meeting, with no one interfering with my journalism this time.
And I'm glad this is an ongoing story for Mocha, and he seems to be committed to it. And he has a presence there where they know, don't mess with his camera. He will report them. And now they're letting them in to these meetings to make sure there's transparency built in here.
Thank you so much to Smile to Everyday Life for the $10 super chat, saying Keith Wilson, Jeffrey Rath, Leighton Gray, Bruce Party are great speakers for Alberta independence. And we continue to share that sentiment as well. All the ones you mentioned, I really like.
That's the unofficial leadership of the movement. Let's just be frank about it. Like, but I know the movement typically says, "Oh, we're grassroots. We don't have leadership." No, what the names you just
they're
named
the voices. I don't know if I'd say leadership. They're the voices, and voices are important. But it is also important that it is, and continue to highlight that it is citizen-led initiative that got all this started and forward, because that allows everybody to point out this is what democracy looks like all the lefties like to chant at the ridiculous protests. I hate them. Because I used to chant that when I was really woke. Moving on.
Now you're really conservative.
Yep, because I realized the error of my ways. Did a hard turn towards the right. Matrix Mastery says, quote, Canada is banning gas cars by 2035. So someone looked into how it passed. No vote, no public debate. Get used to that, especially now with a majority. Just a regulatory change pushed through quietly. Mandates ramped up 20% by 2026, 60% by 2030, 100% by 2035. Governments are now deciding what you're allowed to drive and where, I will say.
Yeah, and this is very important to leave it there. Go up top. To see how they change this from 2026 to 2020 to 2030 to 2035, and how they're trying to completely regulate gasoline powered cars out of existence in Canada. If they can do a major regulatory change like that without any kind of vote or oversight, it's scary what Carney's going to do with the majority government as he consolidates power federally. There's going to be a lot of things he's going to start regulating out of existence. I'm thinking meat being one of them.
Not many Canadians know there's an electric vehicle mandate in place right now. It was without a debate in Parliament that says by 2035, you can no longer buy in Canada a hybrid or gas car. You have to buy an electric automobile. It was quietly put in place by the Environmental Minister, Guilbeault, in the last Parliament, and he just changed SEPA, the Environmental Protection Act. And all they did was said that all vehicles made in Canada have to have zero emissions. It's an example where government thinks they know best. And, the examples we give of why this doesn't work, not only with the cold climate we have here and rural Canadians who, need their vehicles, but Peterborough just had a powder outage 3 weeks ago. It was one of the only Sundays we didn't door knock, and power was out for 5 days. At that point, you don't have a car if you have an electric vehicle and you can't power it. It's an example where government thinks they know best, or our alternative is if you as a family believe that you want an electric vehicle, then buy one. Make sure you get the adapter in your home. As a government, our job is to make sure the infrastructure is there, the power grid, if we need whatever that power supply is, but it's not to tell you to buy that vehicle. And that's the difference in a nutshell between conservatives and liberal governments.
Yeah.
Except now the Conservatives have no voice and can't say anything about it.
Yeah, and that's the big issue here.
And I mean, good on him for bringing it up, but
well, not only good on him for bringing it up, the way they're going to start trying to rule over the people, there doesn't have to be a vote. They don't have to actually even inform you what they're doing. They can do it through small regulatory bodies, very quietly implement the policy and say, this is the way it is now. And we have another story in a little bit about them changing the structures of how a lot of these regulatory boards are even manned. They're going to increase the number of liberals on these boards so they have an outweighted voice on what little conservatives are left.
Exactly. So Alberta independence. Ryan Curtison says, quote, Champagne gets asked last night if he understands how Canadians in the writings of the people who defected to their party might be feeling. He basically claims, at the end, people in the writings understand why they left. I'm so tired of this party telling me and others what we need, feel, and want only when it's what they want.
Well, the Chihuahua here is going to completely gaslight all of Canada, saying this is what Canadians want. If these floor crossers are voting with their feet, the Canadian people want that, which is absolutely insane. The only way to respond to this is through Alberta independence and to break free of this.
Literal gaslighting.
Because this is only starting. They haven't even completely consolidated power yet. Yeah. Wait until they do. They'll be talking down to you instead of to you.
More, because they already do.
But it was the defections, the 5 defections that put you over the top here. And in those particular ridings, 4 Conservative, 1 NDP, people voted for a specific party, a specific brand, and may feel frustrated about what has happened here, certainly in those local areas. The Conservatives have criticized the legitimacy of the government you've now formed. How do you defend what's happened to voters?
Well, this is how our system works. If people, I'm not surprised that people on the other side of the bench are soul searching. When you see what we've put forward, look at today, we reduced the fuel tax for Canadians, giving them a break of $2.4 billion at the time.
That they imposed. Oh my God.
Calm
sorry.
down. Calm down.
We needed most to give them a boost and a bridge towards the time that our economic plan will pay a dividend to them. I think if you sit in the opposition bench, you look at what we're doing, investing in infrastructure, investing in housing and defense, innovation. You see the numbers coming from the International Monetary Fund and others. You see this is a plan that is working. And I think it's a plan that brings unity. This is Canada for all and all for Canada. And I think, to your question, I'm not surprised that they're soul searching because they have to represent their constituent. But I think their constituent understand also the world is changing. And we need to do things at speed and scale never seen before.
He's essentially saying you retarded lemmings don't know anything, and when you vote, you're not really voting because you would have no idea what you want.
If you vote for a floor crosser, that's what you voted for. You want it just as much as the floor crosser wants it. It's a ridiculous stance, and I think that's going to be their stance going forward.
It's literally he's telling the constituents turn around and take it, essentially, and shut up while you're at it. Keith Wilson says, quote, Alberta independence is the only realistic path to protect our economy from ongoing federal policy damage. For our kids and grandkids, the choice on October 19th is clear. We need to vote for long-term prosperity, and neither Ottawa nor Alberta Federalists are offering one. Heather, do you want me to read the bottom one?
Yeah, the bottom one was actually the important part.
I'm going to. Heather Exerpiro says, quote, new RBC report between 2015 and 2024, more than $1 trillion in investment exited Canada, the largest capital exodus in Canadian history. Wonder why. 6 sectors where Canada can attract back investment. Not Canada, Alberta. Oil and gas, $705 billion. Electricity, $635 billion. Mining, $200 billion. Agriculture and food processing, $205 billion. And defense and space, $30 billion.
And this is just the deindustrialization of Canada. If you can't see this has been happening for a decade, I mean, it's obvious. When Carney tells you this is the best economy ever, you can just look at the numbers there.
Coal.
And none of that needed to happen because the natural resource sector is ready to boom. If you just take down the regulations, take down the carbon taxes, billions of dollars are going to come in to invest.
Cole says, sorry, I think I skipped a bunch, but I'll read this one first because it was about to leave as well. Cole says, the U.S. Bill of Rights is great, but states use bad laws to restrict your Second Amendment powers. It should be extended and more clear so that nothing is restricted.
Well, yeah, and Bruce Party was talking about this when he talked about a lot of his constitutional proposals and stuff like that. He says language changes over time, and it's almost impossible to make a bulletproof constitution because it's going to be interpreted different over time. That's why supporting documents are very important when you're forming the constitution.
Sam says, NNG, what are your thoughts on the $500 billion line of credit from the U.S.?
Yeah, they're going to need a line of credit, absolutely. And it's good to know that's there, but there needs to be radical transparency right at the beginning because if you get $500 billion when you're forming a country and you don't even have the systems of transparency in place yet, something's going to... Somehow that money needs to be dollar for dollar, open and transparent, exactly what it's being spent on, because it's crucial to fund the founding of a nation without people stealing that money.
James B says, many would vote for Keith Wilson to head this up.
Everybody would vote for Keith Wilson, including me.
Canuck says Keith would be great, and Cole says, as an American, I really like Jeff Rath. Because it reminds you of somebody.
And it pisses me off when I say Jeff Rath to Donald Trump of Canada, but he really is, and I like Donald Trump, so it's not a slight at him in any way, shape, or form. That being said, I think Keith Wilson is very much well balanced and knows the issues inside and out, and he has this level of trust with the Albertan people that nobody else in Alberta, I think, does at this point.
But I do think they complement each other very well.
They do complement each other very well, and they are dividing a lot of work.
Jerry Conspiracy says, after separating, put in no floor crossings in Alberta independence. If it happens, it happened many, many years ago in Alberta. And again, Gladue herself had said, "Oh, if anybody floor crosses, there should be another by-election for the constituents to decide." And now she's completely against that idea.
Yeah, and in most likelihood there would be parties, but there's talk about potentially no political parties and entirely new systems being founded here. And how would you break down political power? Doesn't necessarily have to be federal and then local and stuff like that. There are new systems we can create here. There are conversations coming up. So I wouldn't necessarily just go right into we have to adopt an American system or a Canadian system. What are some other good ideas that are out there that necessarily doesn't put a ton of power within the federal government?
Philippe Solio says, yes, Cole, some U.S. Democrats are fighting to destroy our Second Amendment to bear arms.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerning factors when I hear so much talk about we just want to adopt the American system from 1776. Over time, we see it has eroded to the point now the Democrats are really starting to capture the system. So we need to make improvements on that, even if we do decide to take that system. But there are some serious conversations that need to happen.
Yes. And Troglodyte says, federally, your vote doesn't matter. That's the understatement of the year. Jerry Conspiracy says, quote, Alberta says goodbye to foreign aid and good message to carnage.
Yeah, and I want to see much more power invested into communities and small government and less power at the federal government level. When Alberta does get its independence, the federal government would be the entire province of Alberta, but I want to see a lot of decisions made on a community level.
Michael Drader says either ban floor crossing or penalize those representatives by removing their salaries for the rest of that term. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You really, because I mean, and then.
But then you're gonna have those backroom deals where we'll double your salary.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, they still get the money they get for floor crossing.
Well, and what I've been saying about there's massive invasion of citizens' privacy these days. I'm saying if people want to run for politics, they need to sign off on their privacy is going to be completely invaded, meaning access to their bank accounts, 100% transparency to their cell phones, to their cell phone records. That's why they're getting paid very well. Politicians get paid very well. Part of that is giving up your privacy, I think, going forward. The way it's done now is citizens lose their privacy while politicians get more privacy so they can do more corruption.
Yes, Jerry Conspiracy says to stop carnage and foreign aid by Alberta to separate, say yes. Philippe Solio says, I like both Jeff Rath and Keith Wilson. We need more constitutional lawyers like attorneys like them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of constitutional attorneys, and I used to hate lawyers, but there's a strain of constitutional lawyers on a global scale, quite a few in Canada, quite a few in the United States that have really earned my respect.
Raptor Fan says, great conversation. Just subscribe to your channel. Thank you so much. It really does help. Sean says that because you can speak English if you only spoke Spanish.
You do speak Spanish.
I do speak Spanish.
Spanish is actually her first language. She's from Mexico. That's why we moved to Mexico once we voted once we voted for our own independence.
Okay. Because you can speak English if you only spoke Spanish. No, because I thought maybe it was about the immigration thing that I knew people that were taking advantage of it, maybe because they spoke Spanish. I'm not sure what the comment was for, but yes, I have a whole channel in Spanish if you ever wanna go see that. DeBilver says, good evening, Nat and Guy. Hello, thank you for being here. Sean says, but they aren't political refugees, they are economic refugees. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
And the problem with refugee status, it has been so abused by international NGOs, by the UN, even smuggling in laws into countries to take their sovereignty away and bring in new voting blocks. That's why refugee status is so dangerous now. It's because it's been so abused over this last decade.
It's been allowed to be abused because abuse will always happen if you let it happen. If you put in and mechanisms for that abuse not to happen and you're actually strict with it, then even if people try, it won't continue to happen.
If you have a
but if the door is open, some people are going to walk through it.
If you have a no refugee policy, and with the caveat of except if you pass a specialty bill for a one-time allowance of refugees or anytime you want to allow refugees, it literally has to make its way up so people can approve it. But generally, you need to have a no refugee policy so the UN and other NGOs don't force policies upon your country, because that's what happens these days. Hungary's being forced to reverse a lot of their refugee policies right now, or at least they're attempting to put pressure on the new president if he wants billion-dollar loans.
Sam says, actually, Parisiu blamed, quote, money and ethnic votes, specifically targeting the Jewish, Italian, and Greek communities, particularly in Montreal. It was a tad racist, says Sam.
Yeah.
In Quebec. Anyway, you don't listen to me. Back in Quebec, because they were talking about Parisiu and how they try to kind of deal with immigration after one of the independence votes and stuff. And this is one of the policies they wanted to implement.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, they're going to call some of your policies racist no matter what policy.
Well, no. Sam is saying it was a tad racist.
Yeah, I know. Okay. But people are going to call your policies racist.
Well, yeah.
Depending on whatever immigration policy that you put in place, because they brought it out to such a large scope. If you discriminate against any specific demographic, they're going to say you're racist. Mm-hmm. So any country that wants to have strong borders, strong immigration policies, they're going to paint you as the bad guy. You might as well just lean into it and have hard immigration policies. And if you want to broaden that out at any point because your nation needs immigrants, you can broaden it out through a special limited bill.
Canuck says, you said it, Nat. I don't know what I said, but thank you.
She says a lot of things. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't.
What don't you agree with?
Well, let's continue on.
James B says, look at what happened when Ron DeSantis sent refugees, immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, for example. When they actually have to follow the rules that they want to impose upon others, they don't like it that much.
Yeah, and again, when Canada goes into negotiations with Alberta, when Alberta gets its independence, they're going to try to use all these refugees or people that are on uncertain status within Alberta, if Alberta wants to send them back as a sticking point and try to draw out negotiations. So Alberta may just have to say, okay, we'll take them.
And James B says, always rules for thee, but not for me. Cindy Manick says, quote, why did I say quote? My grandfather came here, no handouts. They had to be sponsored by family or friends and had to get a job and work till they could afford to build a family homestead in Riley.
Yeah, and absolutely. That's sponsorship, it needs to play a big part within the immigration system, and so does marriage. Those are good immigration policies.
And Sean, sorry, says Nat never read my super chat. It's because I hadn't seen it. I did read it afterwards once I saw it.
And usually I see him, but my chat.
And I'm usually looking at his phone because I can see if any come in. So I go back and look. But because when we're on the other screen, I can't see your actual chats. Sorry about that. Michael Drader says, can't justify bringing my Panamanian prometida or fiance to Alberta before a successful referendum. Bringing her to enjoy 7 months of winter along with 41 extra taxes is a bad deal for any tropical woman. I agree, even though Mexico's not that tropical. But yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Just wait. Sean says, I thought Justin Trudeau's dad was Fidel Castro.
Yeah, everybody thinks that.
He has a bit of Latino in him. Michael Drader says there's a lot of speculation on that relationship. Yes, there is. And Philip Solio says, yeah, Ron DeSantis was pissed, but he straightened out Florida. And that's the thing. Once you actually, if you get past the whole everybody calling your policies racist or about this and that, And you can actually lead by example and say, okay, yeah, you're calling it this, but look at how the state is doing. Look at how the country's doing. Then you can shut up a lot of those mouths and say, yes, not everything, not every policy should be based on your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. And again, my main concern when it comes to immigration is ideological capture of a new nation. And that you're going to have a lot of people wanting to capture that nation through immigration. Mainly, I'm talking about the Canadian federal government.
Jerry Conspiracy says, I believe in an open book accounting. Just look on our website to see the books. And and now it's even easier to do that.
But I know not only agree with open book accounting, which a lot of nations claim to have, the Mexican government claims to have a lot of this stuff as well, but they need to make it easily accessible for the general public to understand in some kind of form where it's not just accessible, where you don't really know what you're reading, but make it viewer friendly somewhat to say. And then if you want the raw data, you can also get the raw data.
Mm-hmm. Michael Drader, you like this one. You can respond to this one. Says, quote, don't forget Party is from Ontario. He gets the grievances of Albertans, but he wants China to remain intact.
Well, I don't know about him wanting China to remain intact. I've only kind of discovered him through Alberta independence and his suggestions within a constitution. A lot of his ideas are libertarian. I am sympathetic to some libertarian ideas, but I like new libertarianism where there's a strong strand of conservatism in there because libertarianism can go off the hinges when it comes to age of consent laws and stuff like that.
Full-on hard-nosed conservative. That's where we differ in some things still. Sean says they don't want you to have a car. They want you to ride high-speed rail because they're spending billions of dollars on it when they could pay off the debt. Or the bus, or better, never go anywhere so they know where you are at all the time. Exactly.
Yeah.
DeBilver says, I will never buy an electric car. The cost of everything going up. Who can afford them? That too. And Michael Drader says, hashtag I live to pollute. I want that hashtag.
And we're going to go into Alberta Personalities. I've been waiting a while to profile this guy. It's Igor. So let's go into it. It's going to bring up the immigration topic again, though. So
get ready.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Okay, starting with Igor.
And Igor really is the best kind of immigrant you can hope for your country. I mean, this is just an example when he talks here, but then he's going to go into the immigration debate that's kind of happening in Alberta. That'll be the second video. I really like Igor. He's doing a great service for Alberta independence because he is talking to the immigrant community.
So am I.
Not like Igor. You're not as charming.
Here's the evidence that woke ideology can actually indeed be fascist ideology. Yes, you heard me right. Fascist ideology. Russian plant Igor Reltsev, that's me, disclosed he's now UCP member so he can push Alberta separatists from within. So yeah, that's fun. And I linked to my yesterday's Facebook video. That little seditionist B needs to be deported and his citizenship revoked. That's the most xenophobic thing that you can find on the internet. Look how many likes they're getting. That's on the platform full of NDP and liberals and woke ideology. What a surprise. Can't wait for him for the next election.
And we're going to continue to play this, but Igor gets a ton of hate because he is an immigrant from the nationalist community. And good for him for really sticking up for freedom and independence and those values. Not every country really has immigrants like this. A lot of Eastern Bloc countries do because they used to be part of Russia and they understand the importance of freedom and independence. This runs deep within Igor here.
But you can see the entire trend of fascist ideology that they're pushing. They are only wanting immigration, they are only wanting free Palestine, they are only wanting all of those things, and their entire fake gaslighting ideology when it suits the need of their woke ideology. But as soon as you do not comply with their victim woke ideology that they have, it turns into hatred, it turns into violence. Look at what happened to Charlie Kirk. Look what's happening with others. These guys are, some of them, I believe, needs a treatment. They really need help. But in reality, as you can see, these guys are the ones who are going to be yelling bigot. If you are going to be supporting Alberta independence, they're going to be calling racist. They're going to be calling any conservative person a Nazi. actually, in fact, are projecting their own fascist and ideology onto others. And you can see all the xenophobia as soon as you go there, and as soon as an immigrant doesn't comply with their own ideology or with their own worldview expectations. Yeah?
Yeah, and the left or the woke left, they want diversity, except when it comes to diversity of ideology or diversity of thought. And then they want 100% compliance.
But also when they don't get that 100% compliance, it turns into, as the once great Robert Barnes used to say, confession through projection. So what they actually are thinking, they project it onto you. And then if you don't comply with what they want you to say or do, or you're not the immigrant that they had in their minds, or you think for yourself, then their true colors come out. And it's not all wrapped up in the alphabet community flag.
Well, and I do understand me and Igor probably have different ideas when it does come to immigration. In the next video we're going to show about Igor is with immigration. That being said, I'm willing to have a dialogue. I'm not saying I'm necessarily 100% right or he's 100% right, but it's one of those topics that we do need to kind of talk out within Alberta independence, and I am open to ideas.
Igor Ryltsev says, why Indian people don't sign Alberta independence petition? Let's ask his Indian wife.
Well, he's asking his wife, and it's nice that we can get this perspective of somebody from, and she's very honest about it when she does talk about it, even though it may rub some people the wrong way.
Today I have BIW, beautiful Indian wife, here, and I'm going to interrogate her on Alberta independence, try to get some answers for you from South Asian community and what they think about Alberta independence, even though she's originally from India, but she gets angry at me if I say that she's Indian because she had to give up her Indian citizenship when she became Canadian. So not Indian anymore, only ethnically Indian.
Ethnically and culturally, yes, and visually. Yes.
Well, I would argue about culturally, you're probably more Canadian than Indian, but...
More of a Viking than Indian, but yeah.
Exactly. So, Nitu, why you would say, why would you say people be concerned signing an Alberta independence petition based on their cultural aspect?
Well, I don't want to generalize the whole, Indian community with my answers. I just wanted to touch up a couple of things that I have seen from the past couple of months from my friends, from my Indian friends or my immigrant friends that we have. Most of people, they are afraid. It's as simple as that. They are afraid that just like the Freedom Convoy, if their bank accounts are going to be frozen or, if their employment is going to be taken away, because most immigrants, let's be honest, they are starting new, right? They have little amount of resources, not as settled as Canadians.
And I would agree with they have littler resources because the Canadian government's making sure they don't at this point. But
except for some.
Are so first-generation immigrants that most of our friends are, they are a little bit worried. I'm not going to be talking about second or third-generation Canadians who have been here for years. I'm just talking about first-generation Canadians, new Canadians who we've been in touch with. And they're honestly afraid that for the fact of their status, if they are PR, whether the PR would be taken away. If they are in work permit, would it be converted into different permanent status Alberta.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I do highly recommend the video. It's a very interesting perspective because the perspective is different than mine. She also comes from a very different community than Igor immigrated from. Igor has this really hard streak of independence because he came from an Eastern Bloc country that used to be under the control of Russia. So he understands the value of freedom and independence. She comes from a specific region within India where there's a hard line of communism within the community. Igor and her talk about it within that video. So I thought it was very interesting when they got to that part of the topic specifically and her parents' views on Alberta independence.
So Igor Ryltsev, I think I can never pronounce his last name, but yes, so go watch it there.
Okay, let's go into comments and then we'll go into Alberta's Canada.
Jerry Conspiracy says, be self-aware. We only elect puppets, so we put in recall politicians anytime that are compromised. Troglodyte says, having a car makes them have to make a switch to shut it off so hard. Yes. Republic of Alberta, hello, says, access to cheap energy is essential to survival during Canadian winters.
Well, absolutely. And you have the resource of energy coming right from your own province. So it's going to be something extremely easy to access, very low taxes on energy to the public itself, I think is something that needs to be put in the core of the nation. Because we see what's happening in the EU, 60 cents of every dollar is government taxes on when it comes to gasoline and fuel.
Bang Boomerang says, I like when you guys swear and get mad from time to time. It shows emotions, and that is how we all feel inside. See?
Yeah.
You say, calm down. Chocolate says they swear on Rumble. I read swears on Rumble. I still try not to swear.
Well, I was
He
swearing,
does.
I was swearing the one day when we got live on the air the news about the petition being halted for or stayed for a little while. I was furious. The next day I was able to calm down, come to my senses, realize what actually happened.
Sean says California could use those $500 billion just for hospice and daycares. And because California is incredibly mismanaged and most of the money goes, I mean, how much is the train at now? The stupid lightweight rail train?
I'm sorry. I'm originally born and raised in Vancouver, but when I moved to the States after my mother died, I lived with my grandparents in California. I follow California politics really closely as well as Irish politics. That being said, California is, I would say, the most corrupt state in the entire United States. On every single level, whether it's medical, whether it's the military industrial complex, you name it, they are corrupt.
Republic of Alberta says Albertans don't want to use it. It's an emergency line of credit.
It's an emergency line of credit, but it's not necessarily just an emergency line of credit because when you go into negotiations with Canada, you're going to have to buy the federal parks back. You're going to have to buy the military bases back. You're probably going to need to buy military equipment from the United States. There's a lot of things you're going to need to buy at the founding of the nation. You're going to need that $500 billion.
Mosley Stun says, or simply pay politicians the average GDP per capita, which would ensure them to bring in useful people and encourage business. That would be a lot easier. Lyle Norman says, I hear you, Nat. Champagne is an idiot. Yes, he is.
Well, I absolutely hate Champagne, but Rebel News caught him over in Davos and we did a report on it. Shockingly, for that one interview, the man was actually charming. He walked extremely slow when when his security came in to remove Rebel News. He's like, no, let him talk. And then he stayed there at the end, talked to him for a little bit longer. In that one interview, he was charming, but I mean, he is just a liberal chihuahua at his core. And yeah.
Republic of Alberta says Albertans don't want political parties. They want to elect CAs who are directly responsible to their constituents. Each constituency will vote on budgets, projects, and infrastructure, no debt. Also continues, we also want to elect judges and sheriffs. I'll have a caveat there in a second. No corruption, and every dime spent will be open to the public. You don't want to elect judges. Believe me, here in Mexico, they've tried that, and now our Supreme Court and our whole judicial system has been completely captured by the current political party in place, which is extremely leftist, to the point now where they want to be able to confiscate your bank accounts, for example. Does that sound familiar? Without any kind of judicial order or anything else. They just passed the law where banks can just be told by the government to cancel your bank account and you don't have access to that money. And they're also trying to destroy private property rights, very similar to what's happening in BC. So you don't want to elect judges. I would say look further into that. But other than that, I do agree.
I'm actually for electing judges. I know you disagree.
You live here. You've seen what happened.
Yeah, I know what happens here, but I'm actually for electing judges. I think it's gone wrong in Mexico, and there needs to be...
It'll go wrong anytime it happens.
Well, we'll kind of see about that. I was going to say something else there. I think Carney, now that he has this majority government, and it may turn into a supermajority depending if he triggers an election or has more floor crossers, he's not going to want to look like he's abusing power. So he's going to put more and more power out of the hands of politicians and in the hands of regulatory boards that are out of sight, out of mind of the general public, that have massive influence on policies.
Sean says, the Islanders on Martha's Vineyard felt real bad about kicking them off the island, though. No, they didn't. I know that was sarcasm, but no, they didn't. Sam says, we don't want to blame established communities of immigrants for any losses we endure.
Yeah.
And I will say there is a difference, and I do like that we showed a video where there is a difference between settlers and immigrants. Settlers build, immigrants take.
Yeah.
I will say that. Anna loves Carlos says Keith Wilson doesn't want any Alberta leadership role, but that is,
Yeah,
and
I know.
we've said that is exactly why he would be a good person.
George Washington refused to be king of America when they offered it him as well. They wanted him to be king for life, and he said, no, that's not the system we want. And that's why I think George Washington was beloved as well.
Rage Against the Machine says we need the right to repair reinstated. I do agree with that.
Right to repair needs to be put in the Constitution of Alberta. It changes the entire paradigm of where corporations are going these days.
And Troglodyte asks, why do we have to receive the world's riffraff? You don't, but you've been gaslit into thinking you do.
Yeah,
because that's
absolutely.
the right thing to do.
And again, I will say at the founding of the country, just to expedite negotiations with Canada so they don't have sticking points, just allow a lot of the immigrants that are in Alberta to stay there, because going forward, you're going to be able to have extremely hard immigration policies if that's what we desire. That's what I desire for Alberta, but I'm an outsider looking in.
Let's go to Alberta's Canada, or more reasons for Alberta to become independent as soon as possible.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Sorry, it was a bit glitchy there, but starting with this, Sherwood Canada says, quote, Vance declares Carney's ESG national security threat collapsing coming. I haven't vetted this one, but formal ultimatum delivered by the U.S. administration to Mark Carney.
Okay, you're having trouble reading it. Why don't you?
Well, because it's written weirdly.
Okay, why don't we go down to the...
It's not a video, it's a picture.
Yes, it is.
It's a picture.
Okay, go down, please.
It's a picture.
Go down, please. If you would just listen to me, you would see. There
This
you
one?
go. Yes.
Okay, well done. Well, because it was, sorry, the grammar there was pretty bad.
The most powerful financial architect on the planet just got a letter he never expected. Not from a rival banker, not from a hostile hedge fund, from the second most powerful man in the United States government. J.D. Vance, the populist hammer of the new Washington, has just delivered a cold, surgical ultimatum directly at the heart of Mark Carney's trillion-dollar green empire.
However, I do like that they did issue a correction.
Oh, what was the correction?
After double checking with Grok, which is not a great place to double check, but there is no official confirmation from J.D. Vance or the Trump administration of any formal ultimatum to Carney about ESG defense. Blah, blah, blah,
Well,
blah.
you can leave it then.
This is why I usually double check, but today we were running out of time.
And good on you for catching that
I
on
do
me.
try to catch them as soon as we can. This one is also not true. This one, there we go. Ryan Gerdes says, quote, the Liberals, after voting last year on the composition of standing committees, now want to change it because they are a majority government now. They had said at the time this wasn't going to change for the duration of Parliament, but of course now they can, so they will.
Well, and this is what I was talking about earlier by trying to put their hands on the weight of power here through committees.
The newly minted majority Liberal government is signaling it may take control of standing committees away from the opposition.
Look, we're still assessing what that might look like. I think there's a generally accepted principle that committees reflect the composition of Parliament. You can expect news on that not too far away.
But after last year's minority government was elected, MPs unanimously agreed to have most committees composed of 5 members from the Liberals, 4 from the Conservatives, and 1 from the Bloc Québécois. So how will Conservatives navigate the potential loss of power at committee? I'm joined now by Conservative MP Michael Barrett, who is the party's critic for ethics and accountable government. Mr. Barrett, good to see you. It's good to have you back on the show.
Hey, great to see you too.
Have you been given any indication yet from the government on how exactly they intend to change the committee structure? Because all the signals are they're going to reform them.
Yeah, we don't know. They haven't signaled to us or shared with us what that's going to look like, and they can do it a couple different ways. One, by removing a conservative from every committee and diminishing the voice of all of those who elected conservatives, and look to have an accountability mechanism, a check against the power of government. Or they can add a Liberal to every standing committee. So we don't know which it's going to be, but we have some signals on what it might look.
I think it's more likely they're going to add a Liberal to every committee because they're going to want to have something to tempt floor crossers with. So they're going to offer them positions on all these different committees where they'll be able to line their pockets.
Might look like when they do make a change.
Either way, it is going to be the majority government. The new majority government will get the majority on all the committees. Now, that is their right to do that as a majority, and in most normal times, that's how they're automatically constituted. But they did agree last year that the committees would stay balanced for the duration of the Parliament. So they explained why they've decided to go back on what they voted for a year ago.
Well, they haven't explained that to us or to Canadians, and we're concerned by some of the signals that we're seeing based on what's happening at committee with government members, Liberal members, filibustering committee's work. And the Ethics Committee is in its third day facing a Liberal filibuster. We're looking for some basic accountability about a minister, the 90...
Okay, yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because he's going to go more to empowering committees and ruling through committees than even the federal government. So it doesn't look like he's overreaching with his majority.
And also, Holly Jones says, quote, majority government will move to regulate legal internet content, says Canadian Heritage Minister Mark Miller. The reporter asked, how seriously are you considering this idea? And he said, very seriously.
Yeah, and this was the best man at Justin Trudeau's wedding, or one of his groomsmen, sorry. Of course.
Groomsmen. And also there's from Marty saying, quote, yeah, because that's really going to help the economy. Mixotsika says, quote, Mark Miller, sorry, says, quote, I tabled today the draft regulations that will guarantee workers and consumers the right to work and receive services in French while clarifying the responsibilities of federally regulated private businesses. We are taking action to protect French across the country.
Yeah, the country
Good.
needs to be fixed.
Great.
So we're going to make sure everybody speaks French. Fantastic.
Yeah, because that'll really fix it.
That's a
we've
winning
even seen in France.
Well, it's a winning policy when you want to bring the Quebec parties into line with the Liberals and get it more of a majority even. We're basically representing all of Quebec, and they're just going to start having floor crossers.
Should we go to the world or read comments?
Let's read a few comments, and then we got a hard out at 7, so we may have time to do a couple stories on Alberta and the world. That being said, we're not going to be able to go to Rumble today because the interview we have is a fairly big one.
But I'm going to try to read some of the RUMBLE comments before we go.
Okay.
Sean says, is Party a Laurentian managerial elite? No, Bruce Party. Because Sean is from the US, so he doesn't know who we're talking about.
Can you repeat
He asked,
that?
is Party a Laurentian managerial elite?
Absolutely not. He's actually the opposite of that. He's very much against that and against that system.
Jerry Conspiracy says, I don't believe in sponsorships of parents coming in because they will get OAS after a period of time.
Yeah, I don't like how they brought
But
it.
I don't think they do get it, though. Okay.
I don't like how they recently brought it out in Canada. You can immigrate anybody along your lineage into Canada, and that's how they're planning to get massive amounts of immigrants in once Donald Trump's gone.
Sean says, are Canadian healthcare workers considered government workers? Yes.
Yes.
Republic
and
of
that's why
Alberta
they were
said-
able to be fired by the federal government for not getting a jibby jab.
Republic of Alberta says, yes, there are very few private options and the socialist system is overwhelmed because of mass immigration. Because they didn't look into the infrastructure, they just looked into the numbers. Jerry Conspiracy says, we have 833,000 government workers federally compared to the 1.2 million private small business workers, around 40 to 60% divide.
Well, and I'm going to say this, when Alberta gets its independence, if you do allow flows of immigration to come in, build the infrastructure first. Even if you don't allow the immigrants in, it's not going to hurt to have more infrastructure.
And Sam says, you have to legally have lived in Canada for 10 years to receive any OAS, and then it's prorated. So thank you for the correction, Sam. Sean asks, so will Alberta have single-payer healthcare like Canada? I hope not.
I don't know what they're going to do with their healthcare system, but I know
And I
that
really warn it's not a good idea.
they're going to have enough natural resources to most likely have a free healthcare system, but they also need to have a private healthcare system to take the strain off of the public sector. Because Canada is one of the few countries that only has one sector, and it creates a monopoly.
Republic of Alberta says to Sean, Alberta wants a private system that the government pays the health insurance for. Or at least for some, I would say. Because
Yeah.
then you can also look into employer.
The medical system in the military, or the medical industrial complex, as well as the military industrial complex, just breed corruption. So there needs to be radical transparency within those systems.
Republic of Alberta says, so competition and choice, but energy royalties pay for the health insurance, still free healthcare without the waste and corruption and better service.
Yeah.
And you know, with having either a split like here in Mexico or private, but also kind of subsidized either by the government or the employer, I think that has proven to be one of the better systems.
Yeah.
There's no ideal system, and we've seen they all have failures. Hold on. Jerry Conspiracy says, waste comes from bonuses and BS invoices, cost overruns. And Sean says, interesting, like a Swiss model. Yeah. James B says, yeah, and massive jail time for anyone caught cheating, fraud of the system, something like a minimum minimum jail sentence of 10 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there needs to be massive punishment for corruption and especially for government corruption, judicial corruption, police as well as judges need to be subject to the law and not have immunity either.
Republic of Alberta says, exactly, the Swiss system performs incredibly well. And Sam says, Canadian military pension is very similar to the OAS. The longer you spend, the higher the pension up to a max.
Yeah, but Canadian military pay is just in the dumpster fire right now. We were supposed to have a story on that, but I don't
Maybe we
think
can
we're-
move it to tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sean says, yeah, you have a California accent, guy. He has some weird random accents from all over the
Yeah, I lived all over the South in the United States, so I picked it up from Texas, California, and Florida. But I primarily lived in California for a long time.
Okay, should we really quickly try to go to Alberta and the World, or no?
Yeah, let's go into
'Cause
Alberta
we're
and
in
the
like
World.
we have 5 minutes.
Okay, let's get a couple stories here.
We're not going to have a hard out at 7 probably.
Yeah, we will.
So the first few at the top.
Well, no, we'll do the first story at the top, and then we'll jump into the Irish story that was on Rumble.
Okay. Starting with Eric Doherty saying, quote, holy smokes, Secretary Scott Bessent just said because Iran bombed Gulf nations, those countries are suddenly opening up Iran regime bank accounts to the Treasury so he can freeze their assets. Checkmate playing out.
Yeah, this is going to be big. I don't think it's a checkmate move like Bessent is talking here, but they have billions of dollars within those accounts. But a lot of them have transferred a lot of their money to Russian and Chinese bank accounts at this point, which they're not going to have access to.
Yeah,
but it is a big move.
I think that's not a correct characterization. Yesterday, we announced Operation Economic Fury, and we, for over a year, we have had maximum pressure on the Iranians, both on blocking payments into the Iranian state and going after the accounts of the IRGC.
Okay, and you can leave it there. I just wanted the top headline that we were kind of talking about, because we've been talking so much about Ireland. We won't go into the fake gay immigration scam that's happening in Ireland. We had 2 stories on that, and there was a massive hidden camera investigation into that of a social worker directly informing immigrants exactly what they need to say to qualify as an LGBTQ refugee, and the refugee saying, but I'm not gay. And she's telling them, but you just have to say this. Otherwise, you're going to be deported.
We can bring that tomorrow.
Yeah, we can go that tomorrow. And then there was the second clip, which was a guy saying, yeah, I'm gay. And then at the end of the interview, the reporter says, do you have any family back home? He goes, yeah, I have a wife and kids.
So it is interesting, but again.
But let's go to the Irish story that I had.
can't play it
Why
on
not?
YouTube because it involves self-deletion.
Oh, you can go to the second one, though.
There's swearing in that one.
That's
why they were over on RUMBLE.
The damn Irish.
Well, the damn YouTube commies.
We ran out of a little bit of time today. We're going to read a couple comments before we go. We have a pretty big interview, so I want to make sure we're not going to be late for that.
Yes. I'll quickly go through most of them. I'll try. Rocking Around, hello, says Alberta Quality Leering Center if we don't separate. Exactly. Sam says if Trump loses the midterms, it will be very difficult to get the line of credit from the U.S.
Well,
I don't know if it's possible, but
it's not even necessarily about the midterms. It's about we need Alberta independence to go forward so we can get into these negotiations, and then we're going to have to give up a lot to Canada, whether it's on just different things. Sticking points Canada is going to want to try to draw the negotiations out with. We're just going to have to give it to them and kind of swallow it in order to get our independence while Trump is still in office, because you're going to need to secure long-term contracts with the United States while Trump's in office that are ironclad, that Gavin Newsom won't be able to revoke, because you don't want to be landlocked without any money coming in.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. Republic of Alberta says to Sean, you have no clue. My father has been waiting for back surgery for 3 years. Because I think Sean had said that it's highly inefficient, the U.S. healthcare system or the way the U.S. works. But you have no idea about what's happening in Canada, because it's insane, the wait lists and how many people, number one, have been offered MAID, so to offer themselves instead of getting treatment. But number two, are on wait lists for years. And there is many, many examples of that.
I've lived in Canada, Mexico, and the United States. I've seen all 3 healthcare systems. The Canadian system is just absolutely broken, unless you go directly to the emergency room, and then you can get some kind of care that day. The American system will put you into bankruptcy because it's so criminally overpriced if you don't have good insurance through a corporation. The Mexican system, I think it's broken as well, just like all three are, but it's the best balance because it has a good private public partnership, and it has state-of-the-art treatments that the United States and Canada just don't have. That's why so many people from the States and Canada come down to Mexico for different treatments, whether that's stem cells or other things.
You have to be able to give the people the option to pay either because they have insurance or just they can pay right out of pocket to liberate the socialized aspect of it, which kind of happens here. The socialized aspect of it here in Mexico is completely broken, and it's completely horribly mismanaged. We're missing medications, and we just had a story of medications being watered down, cancer medications for children, so that's horrifying as well. But because there is that ability to pay if you are able to, then it does at least release a little bit of pressure from the socialized system, which in Canada doesn't happen.
Okay, 2 more comments, and then we got to have a hard out.
More.
I know, I'm sorry. Yeah.
One will be Joe Rush. Thank you for being here. It says, cheers, everyone. Hit the like, share, and subscribe before you leave. Yes, thank you so much. And then, because the rest don't make sense if I don't read the other ones. That's the problem.
Read 3 more then.
Thank you. Hold on. Yeah, Sean says, Republic. Oh, I know. We get a lot of British Columbians here in the Pacific Northwest using our healthcare and paying a lot for it. And those are the ones that still can do that. But because there is no option to do that in Canada, they have to go to the US to do it.
Most of them come to Mexico, though, to be honest, because you get better treatment at a cheaper price.
Mm-hmm. Hold on. I don't know which one to read now.
Well, you get better treatment at a cheaper price, and you get it extremely quick. There's no wait for anything.
Mm-hmm. And Sean says, I just want Saskatchewan to be forced to have daylight savings time. And Sam says, the only top up on OAS is the supplement for low-income seniors. That is prorated too. And mostly Stan says, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much. And Sean says, see you guys. Should I read some quick ones on RU and BLE? Because I completely ignored them.
Okay.
Rusty says, hi, chat. What do you see in the world today? Well, we kind of went through it pretty quickly, so sorry about that. And hello to Christo, who says, hello, dears. Alberta Independence, still at work, but I caught your show from the beginning. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Hold on. Christo says Max is from Chile originally. I think he lived in Quebec for a while and Alberta now. So that is
fantastic.
Freedom Calendar. We were wondering where he was from. Cool. Yeah, I detected Latin American, but not sure where, or the accent. Hold on. Rusty says, immigration, in my opinion, start with the obvious ones, lawbreakers and overstays. Next, go to the universities and demand to see attendance records and also job and how much they've been working and if they were able to do so.
Yeah.
This says the issue is illegal immigration, pay in like everyone else. I have a good friend from Palestine, been here for years, love him to death. The whole community is about, but some in the community are about cheating the Canadian system.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, being honest about what is actually happening as well.
Well, yeah, and thanks for everybody for tuning in today. We have to have a hard out now because.
And thank you so much to Christo for the $5 Rumble Rant saying, here's a tiny bit towards your summer Alberta trip. Thank you so much,
really
Christo. I'm sorry we missed all the rest of your comments. And KP for you, hello. Thank you for being here as well. I will read through them when we're off after we have the interview, so we can respond to them tomorrow. Maybe,
well, and thank you for everybody for tuning in today and sticking through us. I know we had some tough conversations about immigration. I know it is a divisive topic within Alberta independence. I have a pretty hard-nosed opinion at it. I know everybody's not going to agree with it, but I'm open to having that conversation, and I think it's something that does need to happen.
Yes, and tomorrow we can continue it, maybe have the stories and keep reading your comments as well. So have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Adios.
Goodbye.